All right, so in this tutorial, I'm going to talk with you about the gcloud command line interface. So the thing to know about the gcloud command line interface is the Cloud Console, which I'm currently showing on the screen, is a visual way to interact with Google Cloud services and your resources in Google Cloud, but sometimes it can be slower than necessary. And I mean slower in the sense of you having to click around in the UI and everything. So it's really convenient. And when I was using Google Cloud at my job, this is like the main way that we would interact with GCP. But you kind of get to a point where you understand enough about GCP services and resources that it can be more convenient to interact with them through the command line tool, where you're just sitting at the terminal and you're typing gcloud commands to do the exact same things that you would be doing in the console. So a lot of GCP practitioners prefer using gcloud, and it can, for certain things, just be a more convenient way to manage your resources. There is a little bit of a learning curve, right? Because the UI, the Cloud Console, is obviously designed in a way to actually kind of guide your usage of GCP resources. If there isn't a button for it, right, then you pretty much know that you can't do that thing with that GCP resource or service, right? If there is a button for it, then you pretty much know, okay, this is, it basically lists or presents to you the options of things to do with your GCP resources. So with gcloud, you kind of have to know the commands, the structure, the patterns, or if you don't know those things, you need to know how to find the command that you need. And so this is not going to be a comprehensive lesson on gcloud, but I am going to be using it in later tutorials. And so I want to lay out for you some of the patterns and just essentials when working with gcloud, so that you know, okay, if I understand this pattern, then I don't necessarily need to memorize all of the gcloud commands that I might be using. Or if I understand how to look for the command that I need, without even leaving the terminal, then I don't need to be using the Cloud Console for everything. So I have a terminal up, and this is just because I clicked on the Cloud Shell over here. And I'm going to go through some gcloud commands together and just kind of lay the foundation for later things that we're going to do. All right, so I've pulled up a terminal, and I've actually unset some of the things in my gcloud configuration so you can see how setting it up works. So if I type gcloud config list, this shows you what my current configuration with gcloud is, right? Some of these things you don't really need to know about, but one of them that's important is the account. So this is the account that I'm using. This is just an old Gmail account that I set up for GCP Study Hub. And what you can also notice is that there is no project set here. So if I were to try to run a gcloud command that would require a project, I would get an error. So if I type gcloud services enable compute.googleapis.com, it's going to tell me that the project property is not set, and I need to either specify that with the project flag, or I need to set that in the gcloud configuration, which basically provides the default flags for all other gcloud commands that I'm going to be using. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up the configuration to use the project that I'm currently showing in the console, which is called My First Project. That's the project name. The project ID is Amazing Office, blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to say gcloud config set project, and then I'm going to type the project ID. One thing to note here is that if I just start typing the project ID, which starts with Amazing, and I hit tab, it'll actually autocomplete for me. it'll autocomplete as long as what I've typed thus far is a sequence of characters that are unique to a specific value. This is the only project ID that starts with amazing among the ones that I have access to. And so when I hit tab, it's automatically able to tell which project I was going to type. So if I hit enter, it has updated the property project. So now if I enable an API, gcloud services enable compute.googleapis.com. This is enabling the compute engine API. It will actually work. And this will take a minute because enabling APIs can take a little bit, but it will complete successfully. All right, so now it's telling me that enabling the API worked, and we can move on to setting some other properties in our gcloud configuration. I'm going to set the default region and the default zone. gcloud config set compute/region US East 4. All right. So, okay, looks like I mistyped compute. Okay, so now pretty much going forward, any commands that I type will by default use the US East 4 region unless I specify a different region. US East 4 is close to me in the United States. It has a lot of resources available, but you can use any region that makes sense for you. Now, also note that not all GCP resources are available in each region because these are actual like physical data centers that have certain types and numbers of chips or machines available in them, and Google is constantly changing the machines that are available or building new data centers and new servers for people to have access to. And because that's kind of in flux, not every region has every type of resource available in it, but generally there are certain main ones that have almost everything. In the US, US East 4 is one of them, and US Central 1 is the other that pretty much is guaranteed to have every type of resource available in it. I'm not familiar with the ones necessarily in Europe or Asia or South America, for example, but you can pick the one that's either closest to you or has the resources that you need. But you don't really need to worry about that for a lot of the things that we're going to be doing in our tutorials. So now that I've set the region, I can also set the zone. gcloud config set compute/zone US East 4A. And so now any command that I type that creates a new resource will use by default the US East 4 zone within the US East 4A zone within the US East 4 region. All right. And this is now part of our gcloud configuration. We can change this at any time. We can override it with a zone or region flag in our commands at any time. But now by default, we're going to be using the US East 4A zone and the US East 4 region. Now, let me create a couple of resources so you can see what that looks like, and also so that later on, other commands that we use will be more useful because we will have actually created some resources. So because I have enabled the Compute Engine API, I can actually create a Compute Engine instance, a Compute Engine VM. So I'm going to create a VM, and I'm going to do so using this command. What this does is it specifies the Compute Engine service. It specifies the type of resource in Compute Engine, which is the instances part of it. That refers to Compute Engine VMs. It uses CLI demo VM as the name of the VM that we're going to be creating. It specifies the machine type. So the machine type flag lets us tell Google what kind of machine we want in terms of the number of virtual CPUs and RAM. This is a general purpose VM that we are going to be using. I think it has 2 virtual CPUs and 4 gigabytes of memory. Image family and image project tell it which operating system to use. And zone is actually, we do not need to specify zone because we already specified it, the default zone. So I'm going to leave that out, and we'll see that it automatically uses the zone that we specified in the previous line. So I'm going to run this, and it should create a new instance in a pretty straightforward fashion. Yep, so it created our VM instance. It gave it the name that we specified. It lists the zone that we put by default. It lists the machine type that we specified. It also gives us the internal and external IPs. It tells us that it's running. So this is all what we wanted, right? So this is just one command. It took a few seconds, and that is arguably more convenient than clicking through the VM instances creation form or UI in the actual console. Now I'm going to create a cloud storage bucket and add something to it. So let's create a storage bucket with this command, gcloud storage buckets create. And notice what I'm doing here is I am naming the bucket. I'm going to call it the ID of my project, and then with a suffix of CLI demo. And I have to use the GS prefix here to actually specify that it is Google Cloud Storage that we're referring to here. And I also need to specify the location, because previously when I set the default compute region, I was doing that for Compute Engine specifically. So we do have to specify the location of the bucket in this command as well. So it has created the bucket, and notice how I was able to insert the project ID from our gcloud configuration using this parenthetical expression. So I was able to grab that from the configuration and then insert that here. And so we have Amazing Office 412120 CLI demo as the name of our cloud storage bucket. And now we're going to put a file in the bucket so that it's not empty. We're just going to create a very simple text file. And then we're going to add that text file to the bucket that we just created. Perfect. So that was pretty straightforward. So now I've got a running virtual machine, and I have a cloud storage bucket with a file in it. One thing to note is that these do cost money. If you're on the free trial, they won't actually charge your credit card. But if you're not on the free trial and you don't want, to rack up costs, think about, after this tutorial, if you're following along, deleting those resources so that it doesn't lead to expenses for you. It's very, very cheap. These resources are super, super cheap. The machine that we created, for example, I think is just like a couple of cents per hour if it's running. And the text file being stored in the cloud storage bucket is almost negligible in terms of cost. But keeping in mind just which resources you have deployed in GCP and cleaning them up when you no longer need them is just kind of a good practice. now let's talk about enabling APIs a little bit more. So before I can use any GCP service, it needs to be enabled in the project that I'm going to use it in, right? The API for that service needs to be enabled. So the Compute Engine API I already enabled, and that's why we were able to create a Compute Engine instance, but not every API is enabled by default. When we want to see which APIs are enabled, what we can do is we can type gcloud services list enabled, and we can get a list of all of the APIs that are enabled here in our project, right? So we've got Vertex AI enabled. I think I enabled that previously. We've got the BigQuery API. We've got the BigQuery migration API, the storage API. We've got general Google Cloud APIs, resource manager, trace API. These are some that I have enabled previously. And some of these are also enabled by default. So I think cloud logging API is enabled by default. Cloud monitoring is enabled by default, for example. But not all APIs are enabled by default. And so at any point, if you want a list, you can type this command. And let's say that we want to enable a new API. We want to enable the Cloud Run API, which is not currently enabled here. So if we type gcloud services enable run.googleapis.com, this will enable the Cloud Run service. And again, it'll take a minute. And so I'll pause the video. So that completed successfully. And we can actually enable multiple APIs at once. So I can type gcloud services enable cloud build.googleapis.com and artifact registry.googleapis.com. So this enabled both the Cloud Build API and the Artifact Registry API. Pretty straightforward. Now, I want to point something out here, and this is kind of the pattern that I was talking about. And you'll start to ingest some of these patterns automatically the more that you use the gcloud command line tool. But to just kind of hasten that learning curve, we have a bit of a common structure to our gcloud commands. So we've got the gcloud tool, which is always specified in the beginning. We've got the service, right? We've got the resource, and we've got the action, and then we've got the flags afterward. So if we look back at some of our commands up here, gcloud storage buckets create, and then our flags, right? So gcloud is the tool, obviously. Storage is the service, cloud storage. Buckets is the resource type. Create is the action. And then we have our flags. We have the name of the bucket that we're creating. And we've got the location, which is an actual flag that we're passing a value in. So, we can look at other commands and we'll see the same thing. If we type in gcloud compute instances list, we have gcloud, the tool, compute the service, instances the resource type, and list the action. We're not adding any flags to this one, so it's showing all of the compute instances. But we can see the one that we created earlier in this tutorial listed here. Now, if we were to add a flag, gcloud compute instances list, it would basically be the same structure, right? But I'm going to add a flag, a filter flag. I'm going to filter to US East for A. That's our zone. And this should show the same VM. But if I change this to B, it's not going to show any, right? So The structure is the same between the commands, and you will start to get the hang of this over time. We can look at our storage buckets as well. gcloud storage buckets list. So this is the gcloud tool, the service, the resource type buckets, and the action list. And I'm going to add a flag here for the format that we want the output to be. So what this is going to do is it's going to control which columns we see in the output of this command. So we're seeing the name of the bucket. This is actually a bucket that I created previously. We're seeing the location. This is a multi-region bucket in the United States. And we're seeing the storage class, which is not specified. We're seeing, again, the name, the location, which we said was US East 4, and the storage class, which we did not specify. We could do the same thing for Cloud Run, although this will probably be empty because we haven't deployed anything to Cloud Run. Yeah, listed 0 items, but the structure of the command is the same, right? gcloud, the service that we want to use, the resource type, which in Cloud Run, the resources that you deploy on Cloud Run are services. They're called services. The action, which is list, and then the flags, right? Which in this case, we're filtering to the region of US East 4. So, once you see this pattern, you can start to guess the command for a lot of the services and a lot of the things that you want to do. If you want to see Cloud SQL instances, it would be gcloud SQL, gcloud SQL instances list. For Cloud Functions, it would be gcloud functions list. You don't necessarily need to memorize the commands. You can memorize the structure. It helps you get where you need to go, right? And there are common actions for each service. So there's list, which we've been using. There's create, which we used previously. There's describe, which gives us the metadata, the information about a given resource. There's delete, which obviously gets rid of a resource. There's update, which modifies a resource. So let me show you the describe action. Instances describe. We're going to name the VM that we want to see the description of. And we're going to specify, again, the zone. And so this gives us all this data about the compute engine instance that we had created, right? So a lot more detailed information with the describe action. And we could use that for other GCP resources that we create as well. The describe action is common throughout many Google Cloud, gcloud commands. Now, what do you do when you are stuck? You can type gcloud help. And typing gcloud help will give you helpful information about how to use gcloud commands. It'll also, give you available services and groups that you can use. It'll give you common flags that you can use. You can kind of read through this rather than, for example, going to the Google Cloud documentation. So here are the groups, right? Which are essentially services, but they use groups because groups are essentially collections of commands that do similar things, which often corresponds to the services in GCP, but not necessarily every single time. And if you want to see what's available, inside a specific service group, you can add the help flag to that service as well. So gcloud compute help will show us information specifically for the compute engine gcloud commands. So now we're seeing the groups specifically for the compute engine service. We're seeing firewall rules, forwarding rules, health checks, all of these things. And I can keep going. So I can type gcloud compute instances help, and I'll get advice on exactly how I can use the instances group. So, you know, it can be a little bit overwhelming to kind of go through all this information, but again, it's arguably easier or more convenient than going to the Google Cloud documentation. Obviously, you can also, you know, get advice from an LLM or from the Gemini CLI as well, but knowing that you have the gcloud help flag when you get stuck is really useful. Now, we also showed previously the fact that autocomplete is an option. You can use that not just with the project ID, but you can use that with the services and other parts of the command too. So gcloud, if I type gcloud and I start to type compute and I hit tab, it should autocomplete for me, or at least show me what the options are, which is helpful. So now I can see, if I can't remember what the name of the compute engine service is in gcloud, yeah, I can start to type the beginning of it, and then I can see the options. And so I know it's not components, I know it's not compliance manager, I know it's not composer, so it must be compute, right? Or if I type big, big table shows up. You might be wondering, why didn't BigQuery show up when I hit tab for autocomplete? That's because with BigQuery, you would actually use the BQ command line tool rather than gcloud command line tool in most cases. And so there actually isn't a service group for gcloud called gcloud BigQuery. So Bigtable was the only option, and so it auto-completed to Bigtable. Just to kind of complete this tutorial and come full circle, let's delete the VM that we specified. And I'm going to do that with this command, gcloud compute instances delete, naming the command and the zone, naming the instance and the zone. And something that is interesting actually just popped up, or useful to show actually just popped up. It says that I don't currently have an active account selected. I need to log in with gcloud auth login, or set the account. So sometimes this will happen depending on whether your configuration catches up with the terminal session, or how long you've been away from your terminal. So I'm just going to reestablish my credentials. All right. So now we're all good, and I'm going to delete the instance. It has been deleted, and now I'm going to delete the bucket as well that we created using this command. And so it's removed the objects and the bucket as well. So again, notice that we followed the same pattern. We've got gcloud, the service, the resource type, the action, and then the specific flags. So I hope that was helpful. Getting comfortable with the gcloud command line tool can really pay off in the long run. It's a convenient way to manage your resources in an ad hoc way. And it's also useful in certain production workflows, right? So a good example of this is that Cloud Build can run gcloud commands to deploy services, and often you will actually provide a deployment script that has a lot of gcloud commands to set up and deploy services as part of your CI/CD pipeline. It's also good for repeatable, commands or infrastructure setup rather than having to do the exact same thing each time in the Cloud Console. You can have a set of gcloud commands that you run, or actually a script that you run with gcloud commands to deploy the exact same resource or resources in the exact same way. Terraform also uses a similar structure, or Cloud Deployment Manager does, not necessarily gcloud exactly, but the way that you configure your resources maps on almost one-to-one with the kinds of things that you would specify in gcloud commands: the service, the resource type, the action, and any flags. So it kind of changes the way that you think about your Google Cloud resources, and it, once you get the hang of those patterns, can level up your Google Cloud game, basically, and make it a lot easier and faster for you to manage your resources and deploy them in GCP.